I finished the lecture, and I thought there were two really interesting themes that Dr. Wesh, I hope I'm pronouncing that right, brought to the table. And he labeled them as authenticity crises and context collapse. So how I would tie both of these themes into being a teacher is, let's start with the authenticity crisis, which is basically just an anthropological way of saying lying about yourself online. The idea that I can sit in front of this webcam or get on my Facebook page or Twitter account or what have you and portray myself as someone I am not. I can make myself seem more interesting, smarter. I can say I'm 6'5". I can say that I won, the NJC AA MVP of the year in basketball, and odds are no one's going to go look it up. The internet makes it very easy to lie about who you are or to mold yourself into something that you're not. And it was kind of funny to watch all the old YouTube vloggers get kind of upset about that. There was one individual on the in the video on the lecture who I think was saying that YouTube is a place of honesty and that fiction shouldn't be allowed, or something along those lines, which is just absolutely laughable today, because these big names on YouTube or Instagram or what have you, their job is they make money lying to you. They make money turning themselves into a character they are not, because they're just actors. And the internet kind of gives every amateur the opportunity to become a professional actor in a way. I think it'd be really interesting as a teacher to see how students want the world to see them, i.e. their online personas versus what they're like in person. And this isn't a new concept. Sometimes it's just ignorance that creates an authenticity crisis. As a kid, you think your teachers are infallible or all-knowing or whatever. They're just these perfect people, these role models, and teachers always do the right thing, don't make mistakes. But I can go home right now to Buehler, Kansas, and walk into a house party, and I'll probably end up drinking with some of my elementary school teachers, and that's kind of a shock. That people are not always what they portray themselves to be, and it is a crisis of authenticity. I suppose that's bleeding over a little bit into the real world, but online it's certainly an issue, especially when you're trying to learn something about someone, or if you are trying to assign something to a student, even something like this, a reflection, a video log. Are they going to be honest about it? Are you going to get any real useful information out of it? And I think whether or not they're honest, you are going to get useful information. But I thought that was a great term that a professor had used, and I have a feeling that I'm going to be seeing that a lot. I'll probably be using that term in a few papers this semester. Really kind of stuck in my mind. And real quick, back on the authenticity crises. There was one YouTube video that the professor named by a user called bnestle1973, I believe. And he said in a video where he was addressing his fans after the death of his young daughter that, and I'm paraphrasing here a little bit, I make my videos to help me live in the real world. Which is very interesting because the real world is tough, and I guess that's where the real authenticity crisis is we act one way in the real world, but online in anonymity we create the people we want to be. So which one is the real one? I think that's a fun little paradox there. So the other term Professor Wesh used was context collapse. And I think this is inarguably, objectively, the most relevant point that he talked about when it comes to just everyday use of the internet. Because context collapse is just you saying something and without any context, or even with context and some fun editing, or just someone with an axe to grind, you can really screw yourself online. The example used was John McCain at a veterans meeting of some kind. I don't recall exactly what. making a joke about bombing Iran. And, no one in their right mind would actually think that John McCain was getting in front of a group and advocating that we just go to war with a country arbitrarily or not. But still, um, context collapse exists very much, and we see that all the time. One of the things that we've been told constantly growing up is to not put anything online that you don't want a future employer to see. There is nothing inherently wrong with having a beer or something on the weekend. But if you are a teacher, you might not want a picture online of you having a beer at Applebee's on a Friday night, and that's still context collapse. Whether or not you think that's morally right or wrong to drink a beer, it can be taken out of context quickly to say, look, this teacher's irresponsible, drinking in public, maybe has a drinking problem. You could say that with anything. There's the teachers that toe the line and maybe will say damn or something in class. We all have the cool teacher that cursed once or twice a semester in high school. And, context is important. And context in the realm of the internet is whatever the person making claims wants it to be. It is difficult to defend yourself on the web, and that's a lesson that's going to be taught forever to students, to teachers, to faculty, to anyone who wants to have a career. Is you have to look at the context of the things you put online. And those were, I thought, the two most important points of the lecture. The other part of our assignment was to listen to a podcast. I listen to podcasts pretty regularly. I used to be a mailman, and music got old real quick when you're just walking around town. So podcasts were a big saving grace. I've got a big library on my phone full of different podcasts. So the one that I think I'll talk about is a podcast called The History of the English Language. And it is exactly what it sounds like. It is just a guy going through history, giving you the etymology of words. It's not quite as dry as I just described it, but I like it. And I think that podcasting is the future. Podcasting is wonderful because you can do anything while you're listening to it. It would be so easy to assign homework that is just, you have to listen to this. I am sure that there are applications or websites that would allow me as a teacher to make sure that the audio file was at least played and then hopefully listened to. But kids don't like doing homework. I was one of the kids that didn't like doing homework. But I think more children and students would be apt to listen to an audiobook over the weekend than read the audiobook. I'm not saying that that's a better plan, that kids shouldn't be reading, but you can do so much with downloadable audio and video files. It would be stupid not to utilize it, even if it's just recording yourself giving a lesson so that, hey, if you miss class, here's the information. Back in the day, they used to say, oh, the slideshows are up on the website, or I can email them to you, whatever. But, some people can't just read and retain knowledge. So video, audio, I think is a wonderful, wonderful tool. The social bookmarker that I used was Pocket. If I'm being honest, the reason I used it was because it was the first one that came up on the list. And at the moment, I haven't put too many things down. I put a couple websites that I use regularly. I've got a thesaurus bookmarked. I've got a couple publishing companies I follow bookmarked. And I haven't gotten into the features that I think make it any more useful than just using a bookmark on your browser. I can understand that it would be useful to be able to just log into any computer and get a hold of those bookmarks, but I can also log into my Google account on any computer and get my bookmarks there. I think it's useful in the way that you can tag bookmarks. So once you get to the point, especially as a teacher, there are so many organizations you're going to be a part of and websites you're going to use and resources that you're going to need to start organizing them more. And I'm sure that it'll become a lot more useful as I get closer to that stage. But right now, as a student who basically uses the Forsyth Library database, a couple educational websites that I have for classes, and then my email and Amazon or something, it's not all that much more useful at the moment.